Great. Yes, as you probably saw on your screen, this webinar is being recorded. And we asked, it sounds like there's some people that can't join, so we've had a request for that. So we'll just get started. And just for people who just joined, people are introducing themselves in chat, just name, title, organization. Jessica, for those maybe who just joined, I want to reshare the bit.ly link in chat for the PowerPoint to download. So today, what are our goals for today? We're first going to start backing up a little bit and understand the world we have right now with LaunchBoard, which is very much informed by some of the system-wide initiatives we have, which are the vision and student-centered funding formula. So we're going to back up a bit and talk about those and how that plethora of initiatives has led to a metric simplification effort and metric alignment effort in our California community college system. And then out of today, we really hope that you get a high level understanding of LaunchBoard dashboards because now we're up to 5 and the data sets are included. And then an idea of kind of some of the updates that happened for those of you that might have been using LaunchBoard for a while now. We always understand we've got kind of brand new people maybe to the system or using LaunchBoard. And then we've got people that have been using the LaunchBoard for quite a while. So we try to cater to both. And then we're going to demo the latest version of Strong Workforce Program Dashboard. Jessica will do that, and I'll demo the community college pipeline. And the reason we're doing these 2 dashboards, we'll explain more clearly, but those are the 2 dashboards that are at the top code or program level and sector level. So we're figuring this audience is probably mostly going to be interested in those 2 dashboards, trying to help you understand that you know where to go to get what you need to support other data that you might have, or to just explore. And then we really hope today that you get inspired to feel comfortable using data pulled from the LaunchBoard as part of an inquiry process, we call it, for improving or understanding how you're serving your students. That's just like really important. It always has been a key.
We have a reservation at Pacifica Del Mar.
At West Ed. Are there any questions? Okay. So we'll just keep going then with the PowerPoint. So I have 3 very basic requests today. One is there really are no dumb questions when it comes to viewing and understanding data displayed on dashboards, right? We actually have quite a lot of data in our system that's shared. And so there's really no dumb questions. So please feel free at any time to raise your hand. And I've got, since there's 3 of us, we can kind of monitor the 3 of us, the chat. I also will pause between sections. And then at the end, we really, really hope that you take the time, or you can do it later. It's just a link to a Google form to do a 5-minute survey to help us improve not only the presentation of the information, but also anything to do with LaunchBoard and what frustrates you or what you like. We're trying to build in the continual improvement feedback cycle. We haven't been out in the field as much last year, but we're really back more in the field today to hear more. Today and other days this year to hear from you about improvements you'd like to see. And we're starting to plan out not only next year's build, but future builds. So that's really important to us that the voice from the field gets baked into these dashboards that are built by the Chancellor's Office, but that we as West Ed are really trying to bring in the voice from the field as well. Okay, so our backing up, if there aren't any questions. Okay, so our backing up, high level to talk about just what is metric simplification and alignment that happened that was not really very well communicated out there that's influenced our dashboard. So a really quick overview of the high level system initiatives we have, right? And this is really in the lens of for which metrics are displayed on LaunchBoard dashboards, because now basically a lot of our dashboards are funded and they are shown for accountability reasons, right? And so one of the biggest accountability frameworks is our vision for success, North Star, the vision, you hear it called. And so there's a link, those are links to the Chancellor's Office page to read more if you want. The vision actually spells out really clearly, like the metrics and the goals. And but basically what it is that it's just in simplified, it's metrics used by the Chancellor's Office to evaluate its overall performance, okay? And then student success, which is very much related to the vision for success, and the student-centered funding formula is really supplemental funding based on certain student outcomes, right? And so when you look in our dashboards, you will see the supplemental funding based on outcomes. There's also a base allocation for student-centered funded formula. There's nothing to do with that in our dashboards really, right? It's really the supplemental funding. And so there's been a lot of work on alignment with how those metrics have been decided to be defined by the student-centered funding formula group, okay, at the Chancellor's office. So, you know, if a metric in the student-centered funding formula is like 9+ CTE units, and you look on our dashboards and see that metric, it is aligned in terms of how it's calculated. There's a few little differences, but we'll get to that later. Another big initiative is the student equity and achievement, okay? And so that's really metrics and supplementary funding to support colleges in closing equity gaps related to access and success. And again, that would be associated with the student metrics dashboard. We'll start going through the dashboards in a little bit, but there's just all these initiatives that kind of feed into our work. The Strong Workforce Program is probably the clearest one that has a clear dashboard, which is the Strong Workforce Program dashboard. So that Strong Workforce Program, not K-12 SWP, right? That's a separate initiative at the bottom. This is the one that's been around for a while. Supplementary funding to support the higher cost of CTE with a focus on regional, sector, K-12 to college strategies with focus on CTE students, right? So the dashboard that we have are exactly the metrics that are used for the 17% SWP incentive funding. There's another base allocation, 83% for that funding stream as well. This dashboard is the 17% incentive funding. But those exact metrics, they're aligned again with student-centered funding formula definitions where we've been told to align. There's a little bit of difference, but the Chancellor's office makes those decisions. And then there's the guided pathways. And so that's really this framework, right? And supplementary funding for some colleges, right? There's just like 20 to support the redesign of colleges to make them more student-centered. So we know that every college is kind of undergoing some kind of reform effort, sort of under this guise or umbrella of guided pathways. So there's a dashboard that's first-time students to help with a few metrics that are key for first-time momentum, okay? So it's a very limited dashboard. And then we've got our California Adult Education Program, or what we call CAPE. So that's really supplementary funding to support adult education, which is in our state is delivered by K-12 partners as well as community colleges. And there's a focus on regional strategy. So those are the regional strategy for the non-credit CAPE world, okay, adult ed. And so we have a dashboard that's the Adult Education Program dashboard. And then K-12 SWP, this is our biggest unknown right now. There is written in legislation, there will be a dashboard on the LaunchBoard. However, we need data from CDE and we're still trying to figure that out. But at some point there's supposed to be a dashboard built on the LaunchBoard. It's been talking about it for way over a year now. But we're trying to get nailed down exactly what will be built to help with some metrics that would be displayed to show how well these funds are being used to develop these K-12 SWP pathways. Okay, so few, right? Initiative fatigue a bit, right? And these are just, you know, some of the higher ones. But so because of all these initiatives, it really pushed the need to have, and it started about 2 years ago or maybe more, talking about an idea of a simplified set of outcome metrics, right? Because we have outcome metrics for this initiative and different ones for this one, you know, and they're not aligned. And oh my God, what do? You can't do everything, right? So this idea that these concentric circles, we really have overlap of a lot of the initiatives in terms of the outcome metrics. And then from that, you've probably seen the next slide before because it's been around a long time. We've got our grid of which outcome metrics are included in which initiatives. And so I added to it just where on the student journey do you see the metrics? So you can see there's 3 on progress, 3 on success. What's pretty unique to our state actually in our accountability is we do have employment and earnings metrics in accountability. That's a bit unique, but you can see that we've got a number depending on the framework we've included employment and earnings. And so essentially these are the metrics going down here that are sort of pretty much, there's some differences and I'll going over those a little bit later. And then you can just see where they are included in all the different initiatives, right? And so you can see student success basically has all these metrics, right? So all the metric in student success and the student success metric dashboard, I'll show you today, all those have been brought into our oldest dashboard, the community college pipeline. And then just the last note is that the economically disadvantaged is defined differently in the student-centered funding formula. It's only College Promise Grant and Pell Grant recipients with awards of more than $0. There's actually some awards that happen that are $0 in the system. That's different than what we use, which the Chancellor's Office has defined as a Perkins economically disadvantaged student, which is a little bit broader. We use a different definition for SWP calculations. And so I'll stop there. No questions? Okay. Tend not to be. This is pretty hierarchical. This is kind of more of a leave behind, just trying to make sure if you forget for some reason and you care, oh, these are my vision goals. The one thing I do want to make clear though, which someone just brought up to me the other day, is they said they were at a college and they were handed this piece of paper that was this grid. And they were told, oh, you're in strong workforce program. Well, only look at this then. Well, that's not really true, right? Not only are there just these metrics, there's a lot of other things to consider. These are just high level outcome. And the fact that completed and transfer of math and English isn't part of strong workforce because it doesn't really make sense perhaps for CTE doesn't mean it's not still important, right? For those groups of students. There's still CTE students that are first time that, you know, we want to track and see if they completed transfer of math and English, right? Same with the average number of units. So this metric is an accountability metric in the vision goals that attempts to see how many units our associate degree earners have accumulated as they've been at any of our colleges. And it's quite shocking sometimes. Sometimes instead of, you know, a lot of times students don't just do 60, that's clear, but sometimes there's like 115 units that students have done. So this metric is something also that would be applicable to strong workforce program, right? So there's some goals that just, it's not like this nice linear, oh, you know, like, so it's just this grid was really trying to help with just the simplification and alignment display, right, of the metrics and the initiatives, but not to tell you like, this is only where you're focused. Okay. All right. So I just want to explain at a really high level what metric alignment means, right? It's basically the definition. And there's really two parts to definitions of a metric, right? First is who's included when you look at who to consider. And that's like the denominator. If you think of a numerator denominator, like for a percentage, right? This is the denominator universe of students. So out of all these students, the denominator, right? That's one part that has to be aligned. And then the second part, and that may or may not be aligned sometimes, right? Across different places. And then the part that is the most aligned is the numerator, like who gets counted as attaining the metric outcome, right? How do you say what, you know, earning, let's just take the 9+ CT units, like what grades, right? Do you say it has to be on the same top code, which is not the case for student-centered funding formula? Like how do you count those students? And so here's the example, right? Out of all students enrolled in the district in the academic year, so that would be our denominator, how many students earn 9 or more CT units in the district in the academic year, our outcome, right? And so we strive really hard to make that denominator match, and especially the numerator. So just know that that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about metric alignment. And why do you want to do this? I'll get into a little bit later, but basically you want to see the same things, right? You don't want to see like a student earn 9+ CT units in student success metrics or student-centered funding formula, but it's not the same metric in strong workforce program, right? Because that's just kind of strange. And then you don't quite know what to do. How do you, you know, so this is really getting down to this level of detail metrics. And then just a note that a lot of times legislation or Chancellor's Office directive is now dictating our metric definitions. When Community College Pipeline, which was our first dashboard, was released, and even Strong Workforce Program, it was really practitioners in the field that very much influenced the definition of those metrics. Along came student-centered funding formula that got nailed down, kind of apart from everything, that really started to direct how we define our metrics. And so and then each initiative is a little bit different, right? So this, we're kind of getting to where it gets a little bit more complicated. For example, in Vision for Success, it's dictated in the legislation that only transfer to CSU and UC is counted, right? And not all transfer to in-state and out-of-state, in-state private or out-of-state. The vision counts completions of Chancellor's Office approved certificates 8 units or more, right? Associate degrees, community college bachelor degrees, while student-centered funding formula only does Chancellor's Office approve 16 units or more. So it got still some disconnects, but generally, right, it's the same way you define and count. All right. Okay, so this is just really this idea of sort of oil and water a bit that happens still, right? That just to be made aware of, not that it stops you from using the data, but just to be sophisticated data users, is that while we say with this grid, we show that Venn diagram, it's true, the metrics overlap, the calculations are the same, but still the dashboards are for different purpose and different student universes. And now Jessica's gonna take over and start talking about all our dashboards and a little bit more about the purpose and the student universe and the distinctions between the dashboards, right? Where we kind of get this oil and water happening. And so Jessica, do you want to do your own slides or do you want me to keep?
You can keep sharing.
Okay, all right, I keep sharing and go on mute.
Sounds good. All right, can you go to the next slide? Thanks, Karen. So as Karen mentioned, this is more a brief overview of what the LaunchBoard is. This might be more focused to the folks who are new to the tool itself or just new to the dashboards. Again, LaunchBoard is a suite of dashboards. It's not just one tool. And since I've been at West Ed, we've grown exponentially. So I started about 3 years ago. We had 2 data tools, and now we've expanded to 6. And each of these data tools focus on different initiatives and highlight different student populations, just like Karen just said. And this growth is not just West Ed. We rely on a number of different partners. Education Results Partnerships is our development partner. They hold the MOU with the Chancellor's Office, so they're the ones that hold the data and do our coding, while we support creation of the definitions and support with the calculations and documentation and things like that. So they're a vital partner in terms of the development of the LaunchBoard. We also work with RP Group and Centers of Excellence to really inform how our metrics come to be and make sure that they make sense in the real world. And again, the LaunchBoard is hosted by CalPass Plus, which is run by Education Results Partnership. And so it's a team effort, and again, it's grown exponentially and has morphed in a lot of different ways. And so, oops, sorry, some clicking noise. 1 second, let me reset my. Hopefully this is better. Sorry, this is the only pair of headphones I have for now.
Yeah, I think that's better, Jessica.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's just a brief overview. One of the great things about the LaunchBoard now is that last year we've brought the LaunchBoard from behind the firewall so that anyone can access the data. We freed the data. So if you Google CalPass Plus LaunchBoard, you'll get a link directly to this page, and you can explore any of the dashboards on your own. That is not the case for the K-14 transitions tab, though, which is kind of on hold anyways, just because that deals with K-12 data that's still protected by an MOU through CalPass Plus. And so another unique thing about the LaunchBoard tools is that it brings together a number of different data sources across a number of different years. So in the next slide, I'd like to go a little bit over what data sources we do use to populate all of the tools on the LaunchBoard. So it's mainly powered through the Chancellor's Office MIS system, and that's just data that the colleges report into the MIS system, and we get an annual cut from it to do a build of each of the tools annually. And so most of our metrics are based on MIS. And because we love to travel, we love to follow our students post college, we also incorporate employment and earnings data from Economic Development Department and the CTEO as outcome survey as well. We also have a number of transfer metrics. So we look at the transfer bucket, which includes looking at the CSU-UC match, as well as the National Center for Education Statistics. Guided pathways does not include metrics out after post-secondary, because that's really focused on first year momentum points. We've also have a deal with the Department of Apprenticeship Standards to help track students who are in apprenticeship programs who receive journeyman status, just to help us inform our success metrics. What's unique to student success and community college pipeline, as well as adult education, is that there's additional levels of data that aren't available elsewhere. So for the student success metrics, we have a metric that tracks successful application and enrollment into a college. And so we get a cut of the CCC apply data, which normally does not live within the MIS system. For the community college data, community college pipeline data, we incorporate K-12 data from CalPass Plus, as well as the EDD labor market data, which is unique to CCP. For the adult education pipeline data, that tool itself is focused on adult education students as well as non-credit. And so we bring together data from CASAS TOPS Pro, which is the software used by adult education providers to track students' progression. And we merge it with the MIS system by doing a data match. And so I'm going to pause here for quick questions about any of the data sources.
Jessica, do you want to just quickly say how we do the match for some of these data sources, just so people are clear?
Yeah, so Education Results Partnership does something called a derived key. So if a student has a social security number, we use their social security number to match across all of these different data sources. If they don't have a social security number, which is the case for a lot of our students, we do a derived key using their name, gender, and date of birth. And we create a unique key within our data system so that we can track them across these different data sources.
I was just thinking one thing to note too is that for the blue, for the employment and earnings data, for the transfer data as well with National Center for Education Statistics, that's on social security number. So students who don't have social security numbers, we can't find them in there, right? We don't do, the Chancellor's Office actually the ones who do the match, and they're not doing the derived key there, as well as the Department of Apprenticeship Standards, that's on the social security number as well, just to get a little bit more sophisticated. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Excuse me, could you explain what the Department of Apprenticeship is? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, so California has apprenticeship programs that are run through the state that reports up to the federal government. And there's a separate department within California Labor Department that tracks apprenticeship programs.
And do you know like what sorts of fields that covers? I mean, is it kind of like a mixed bag, or does it have a particular focus?
It's mainly tracking if students, what the data we get is mainly tracking if students have successfully completed the program and reached journeyman status, which means that they've completed the apprenticeship program.
Yeah, we know when they start and when they finish and attain. Yeah.
Right. So are these like mechanically oriented or CTE kinds of things, or
CTE?
Mainly CTE.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Jessica, maybe when we're done, we can. Jessica knows more because she did a exploration with another member of our team. So Jessica, I don't know if there's any like link you can provide when you're done, maybe in the chat or something.
Yeah, I have to dig around a little bit just because it's been a bit. But yeah, apprenticeships, we have your standard ones, which is the construction and trades, and then there's new and emerging ones, which are more IT related. But it's an interesting field for sure.
Yeah, and so and so I do have a question about management. In MIS is a management information system. So here's like oh God, we're like everybody in our system. We have these acronyms, right? So we say COMIS, which is Chancellor's Office Management Information System, or we'll say MIS. They're the same, but yeah, it's just our lingo for a management information system.
Thanks, Karen. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about some commonalities across the dashboards. And so as Karen talked about a little bit earlier, we've arranged our dashboards in a way that would simulate student progression. So when you start at any particular tool, we're going to be looking at the beginning of a student's journey. So it would be, we would want to start at enrollment, and then we dig into the type of student they are, demographics, things like that. And then we go into their learning journey. So it could be student progression, success, and then we end most of the tools with the employment and earnings metrics. So you'll see that all of the dashboards kind of organize in this manner. So you can quickly jump to which section you're most interested in. We also know that most of the metrics are kind of useless if you can't drill down into a specific student type. So there are standard disaggregations or drill downs provided that are usually, it's going to include age, race, ethnicity, as well as gender. And for some other metrics, there might be additional drill downs depending on how relevant that is to the tool and the metric at hand. Another thing that we do is we have to comply with FERPA, which stands for Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So that is to protect students' identities within these public dashboards. So what we do is we suppress small cells. So if there's a metric with 10 or fewer students that populate that chart, we're going to have to suppress it or not show it. Additionally, there's some additional layers of suppression that happen if you can do basic math to kind of figure out the answer. But that's why some data might be available but not showing, because we have to protect our student identities. And just a quick note about the employment and earnings data, exactly what Karen already talked about. We can only do it with SSNs and for students who became employed. We can't really track students who are self-employed in the EDD UI wage file. We can only do that through the survey data, which has its own limitations. Lastly, we've tried to incorporate the ability to export the data in, I think, all of our tabs now, all of our tools now. So if you don't really care about the data visualizations, you can just jump straight to the export and do your own thing with these data. Lastly, last year we spent a lot of time on documentation. And so all of our documentation of our calculations, all of what these different metrics mean, has its own page now on our website. So you can go there directly if you have any questions about how any of these things are calculated or where they come from. And within each chart, you can get direct access to that specific calculation. So there's no digging around anymore. And we also try to provide a little bit more resources, though that's something we're building out currently. So Karen, would you like to add anything before we move on to the next section?
Nope, I think you did a great job. Did you talk about CTOS though, the self-reported so the reason we do the CTE outcome survey, and for those of you that don't know, that's funded by the Chancellor's Office for all the colleges. And now it's been expanded to non-credit. And so we will start, I think next year builds at least the first year display non-credit information. There's been a pilot going on for a while. And so it's a cohort of students from our system. We couldn't do every single CTE student, or it would just be too expensive. So that data is always 2 years lag, but it complements what we can't get in the EDD UI wage file. So like job and fill the study that was on that matrix of metrics of our accountability, that's the only one in there that comes from a survey. And so it's just really all we have, because when we do the match with EDD, all we know about the student is the quarterly earnings of the student and what industry sector they worked in. So if it's flagged that they worked in an industry in construction, for example, we have no idea if they were the construction site manager or somebody that had an office job back in the office. We have no idea, right? So that's why we have to do this survey right now until there's another way to get that information. That's a survey of our CTE students after they left our system, basically. That's all. Thanks.
Those are very important distinctions. I know a lot of people are interested in the employment and earnings data. So the next few slides are really going to be an overview of the 3 tools that we're not going to cover in detail today, but we wanted to get some people familiar with it in case people ask about it, or you're exploring the LaunchBoard and just want to know more about the different tools. So as Karen was talking about earlier, we have now a core tool called the Student Success Metrics, which has become our source of truth for most of our other dashboards, just because we want to have more standardized metric calculations throughout the LaunchBoard. And so for the Student Success Metrics, you go there mainly to get information about metrics that align with the student-centered funding formula or the Vision for Success goals. You can also go there to explore student outcomes for students who have expressed specific goals. So it could be, not every student is going to be degree and transfer oriented. Maybe we have students who are adult ESL or more short-term career focused. So within the Student Success dashboards, you can drill down to the most relevant metrics for those students with those specific goals, and you can get outcomes for them. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more information. Again, these are leave behind slides. The Student Success Metrics is an accountability focused tool. And it's the tool where we're gonna capture the most students. So there's literally no barrier for the student to be included in this dashboard. Any student with enrollment will be counted. One limit, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Well, yeah, but we just, so right now we're not including anybody that has been a special admit student, but that decision, like Jessica, we learned yesterday, that's going to be reversed for next year's builds from the Chancellor's office, where there's not a lot of students, but so as long as a student has a non-special admit enrollment in the year, they will be included, allowing for any kind of special admit enrollment in any prior term in a year. So that will include more students as well. So, but right now we basically start with it. We just take out all special admits from all terms, which is, so that's going to be modified for next year's builds. I know I'm not trying to get too confusing, but I think that's just kind of an important decision. I think it was a little bit unintentional what happened initially, so that's going to be corrected. And this is kind of the world we live in. It's pretty complicated, and like Kathy Booth, for those of you that know her, I've seen her present. She likes to say it's like chemistry, where you got your periodic table, and then you're really creating organic compounds, and you've got to take, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, and that's really what a metric is. And then sometimes we take 3 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, and that's very different. So this is just kinds of things that get pretty complicated. So right now there's no special admits in the universe of students. Essentially, they've been taken out, but we will be adding back in special admits who've had enrollment, as long as that's the special admit have a non-special admit enrollment in our system. So thanks, Jessica, for letting me take that time to explain.
No worries. One limitation to the Student Success Metrics is that you will not be able to access program level data. So this is very high level student outcome information. If you want to do the program level stuff, we're going to cover that in the demos, but don't go here for program level information. So next slide, please. Okay, so our next dashboard I wanted to give a quick overview is our Guided Pathways dashboard. It was really developed to support the Guided Pathways initiative within California, and it's meant to help track first-time momentum points. So really our students getting to college, and how they're doing in the first year. So we're only counting first-time credit students in this dashboard. If you go to the next slide, Karen. And so this is really to help support that. And one big caveat we wanted to say is this is very California focused. So a lot of the metrics, or some of the metrics, will not align with the national guided pathways definitions. It's really for the California specific. Did you want to add anything here, Karen?
Well, so this is our only dashboard that tracks the same cohort of students. So first time non-special admit credit students in the fall, but their first time in the district. Again, this is all dictated to us from the chancellor's office. It's tracking those same students over time through all the metrics, right? Whereas all the other dashboards are snapshots in time. So they're not the same students, right? So it's just the students who transfer to a 4-year this year, right? The students who transfer to a 4-year the next year. It's not taking the same students who started in fall of 2013, let's say, and tracking them, right? So that's just much of a distinction with this dashboard. It's always been a cohort dashboard. We are adding a cohort view into the first dashboard that Jessica talked about, the student success metrics for next year's build. And so just I know that gets a little too sophisticated. A lot of times at colleges, like with research offices, you're easily able to do cohorts of students, right? Exact students who started at the same time and keep tracking. So our views are snapshots in time, right? Of completion or momentum or success for whatever we're measuring. So, but this dashboard is not, again, it's tracking first time. So these would be, when you look at a year, it'll be the first time non-special admit credit students in the fall in that year and then tracking them out.
Thanks, Karen. That's an important distinction. And then the last dashboard I wanted to cover quickly with you guys is the adult education pipeline. I talked about this a little earlier, but it's really focused on non-credit adult education students. You'd go here to really look at the following question. So how are my K-12 and community college non-credit students doing? A lot of the metrics map back to the California Adult Education Program Initiative. So we can see there within the adult education pipeline, we've also added an ability to view first-time versus returning student outcomes. So you can look at those two types of groups separately. And a lot of the main metrics focuses on tracking transition from adult education into post-secondary and then into the workforce. So it's really kind of set up to track those momentum points and those transition points. If you go to the next slide, Karen. I think I talked most about this a little bit already. One of the differences between the adult education pipeline and the two other dashboards that we discussed is really this adult education pipeline is created for program review and improvement. And so you can drill down by adult education program, but not community college education programs, if that makes sense. So you can look at program outcomes for ESL students. You can look at program outcomes for CTE students and compare them across each other. The metrics created within adult education pipeline are aligned with WIOA because a lot of our colleges are reporting to WIOA 2 and most of our adult schools are reporting to WIOA Title II as well. And then where appropriate, we also align with the student success metrics. Karen, do you want to add anything to this slide?
No, I think so. Just I imagine everyone knows what WIOA is. The Workforce Investment Opportunity Act is the acronym for that. So that's kind of our North Star for this dashboard. It's so important in this world. So it kind of trumps everything.
Thanks. So I wanted to, before we move on to the next section, I wanted to pause for any quick questions about any of the three dashboards that we just discussed.
I have a question about the adult education pipeline. So apparently, is that then unidirectional in terms of tracking movements of students from adult education to post-secondary? Is there no way of seeing whether there's any movement in the other direction?
We do have one metric that does track if students ever went to college and then came back to take an adult education course.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we also brought in, that was part of last year's bill, we brought that in. We also brought in some co-enrollment metrics to see if students are co-enrolled between programs, institutions. So yeah, we hear a lot of those stories about.
That's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Back and forth, yeah.
And just I was going to say, just a shameless plug for us. The Cape Summit is happening at the end of this month, October 26th to 29th. So if you're interested in learning more about adult education, feel free to sign up to the Cape Summit. I think if you just Google Cape Summit 2020, and we have an adult education pipeline focused webinar scheduled for the 29th at 8:30 a.m.
Yeah, and the summit's free. And I have to say that the Cape group is really impressive. They're very, very organized and driven. And this will be, they always put on really good conferences. So I know these online conferences are really hard, but if you have time, it is free. And I think when we're done, we can put the link in chat to register. Yeah, there's a lot going on in adult ed.
Yeah, so I'll let you talk about our updates for 1920, Karen, and I'll put in the link to Cape Summit.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks. That's right. I'm going to take over now. Okay, so I just want to kind of update you a little bit on just a little bit more what happened for last year's builds for those of you that are used to using the dashboards. So like I've emphasized, last year was really a year to get metrics and metric definitions to alignment. For those of you who are involved with the Strong Workforce Program, there was a huge change to the metrics that were included in the 17% SWP to align with the student-centered funding formula. So for the round that was distributed last year, there was a big change to those metrics to bring everything in alignment. There was a lot of work behind the scenes in doing that, like I've tried to allude to, but there is a really great momentum behind it. Again, like I say, if you're looking at like course success on one dashboard, you really want to know it's the same, right, as course success over here. So we've got alignment between our dashboards. There's still some things to tweak. There always will a little bit, but we've got it pretty aligned. I was pretty impressed with what we did last year in terms of alignment. There's still some misalignment. I'll talk about a little bit with some of the other Chancellor's Office resources. Another one of our priorities, like Jessica talked about, is we really tried to bring some of the functionality into alignment so that you feel kind of comfortable going between dashboards. And we added some functions that people like that export to CSV to all our dashboards. And we tried to add a detailed comparison view to our dashboards. It's still missing from a couple, but we're going to demo all this in a little bit to show you what we're talking about here. But those are some of the big overarching things we did last year. Here's was the release schedule. We first released an SWP update because it had to be updated to calculate last year's round of 17% with the new student-centered funding formula definitions, which actually changed in late summer, early fall. They changed the initial student-centered funding formula. We had to wait. Then finally, those were nailed down, and then we got that up, that dashboard with just 17-18 data. Then we were able to calculate the first round that the Chancellor's Office distributed in February of the 17%. And then in May, we were able to update the adult education pipeline with 2018-19 enrollment and completion information. It wasn't until June and July that we got student success metric updated. And part of this was we didn't get data till pretty late from the Chancellor's Office for the builds. And then the global pandemic happened, and all of the coders at our partner organization, the Educational Results Partnership, switched from working in the office with their servers to working at home. And that just caused major disruption. So we really bled into next year with July and August releases, which was really hard for us. We really want to finish everything, God, at least by June, the end of the academic year. But so that's when SWP got updated with 18-19 data. That is the data now where the next round of 17% strong workforce has been calculated. It is in the Chancellor's Office hands. They're just organizing, preparing the memo for distribution. I heard yesterday from the WED team, or Workforce Economic Development team at the Chancellor's Office. So those funds should be distributed. The 83% for that round has already been distributed in early August. This is just the 17% that's based on those incentive outcomes that are in the Strong Workforce Dashboard that Jessica's going to show you in just a little bit. And then it wasn't until August that we got Community College Pipeline updated. That's the dashboard that I will demo, and then Guided Pathways was updated. And part of this delay in these 1, 2, 3 was really this SSM dashboard, like Jessica said, is well, it's not at the program or sector level. It's our core dashboard for definitions. And so there's just a lot of work to do to really get those definitions tweaked and aligned. So, and we had new members at the Chancellor's Office we were working with. So with last year, there's been a big turnover at the chancellor's office the last year and a half. And so now they're staffed with a visiting vice chancellor, John Hetz, who's fantastic to work with, and a research staff with Valerie Ludney Wagner. But so for a long time, the chancellor's office only had one person in research. And so it was hard to do definitional alignment and things because there just weren't folks at the chancellor's office to talk to about that. But now they have a staff that came up to speed this last year. So these next year builds should go a lot smoother, we're hoping. There won't be nearly as much work to do. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's really clear out there that the LaunchBoard are not the only resources for data. Oops, sorry, I went two slides too far. In our system. So Data Mart's always existed. It's not always, a long time existed for a long time. It's public. You can just Google it. This is a link to it. It is very, very helpful for just downloading data. It's not really like a dashboard. And there are some just counts in there. There are metrics in there. The only problem with it is you don't always know exactly what you're looking at, which is fine, but it doesn't always align with ours. And we kind of know what's behind the scenes, but they don't really have something like we have, like a metric definition dictionary to tell you exactly what you're looking at. But it is an amazing source of information. It's a little bit clunky, but it's just for dumping out data. And like not all the disaggregations are there, the ways to drill down by ethnicity all the time. But I highly, highly recommend if you don't know Data Mart, like please, like I use it like still a ton. And then the Chancellor's Office Curriculum Inventory System. This is open to everybody. It's not a login to input information for your college. It may look like you need a login, but you don't. You go to the homepage. In fact, I can probably just navigate there and show you really fast since we have a little bit extra time. And so I know this happened to me, is that it looks like you need to log into Koki right here, but you don't. You can just go right here to programs on the right-hand corner up here. I'll go in a little closer. Right here to courses. And you can just select your college if you want. You can see, you want to select a goal, top code. If not, you'll just get everything, and it is a nice download to Excel. You can do the same thing for courses. And while we have heard that there are some issues with some of the input in Koki a little bit, still, this is an amazing resource. It gives you all this kind of information about your courses. And if you have any, I'll tell you in a second where to go to understand what these codes are. Like these are Chancellor's Office MIS codes, CB04, CB09. I can't believe now I know these codes. When I first started at Wested, I had no idea what these were. But over time, I've learned. So to do that, to understand what those codes are, go back to where I was. There's the Chancellor's Office MIS Data Element Dictionary. And it's pretty easy to find if you want to know what like CB04 is, if you have the time. I understand this is time consuming. You can go to their MIS Data Element Dictionary. It had disappeared for a while because they needed to make it ADA compliant, and now it's back up. And so that's another really good resources. Again, these are all linked if you download the slide presentation for you to use to complement the LaunchBoard. Okay. So before we dive into a demo, and I do want to give you a break, I think right when I'm done with this section, we'll take a 5-minute break to go deal with your lives. But I just want to quickly talk about, what we sort of learned about dashboards, and this goes beyond just our team. It's sort of people out there that work a lot with doing educational dashboards, longitudinal dashboards, what we call them, because you're really tracking students. So our longitudinals can start in K-12, and then we track through our system, and then we track them out, to other post-secondary institutions, either other 2-year or 4-year, and then out into the workforce. So that's why we call it longitudinal. But they can't answer questions about why, right? They're just showing you information. So they're really kind of what Kathy Booth likes to say, they're stupid. They're kind of dumb, right? It's like, here you go. So I want to just kind of put this in context of like other data that's out there and how this is still useful data, okay, before we start diving in, right? But still, they're useful data, especially because at a college, you can't get information about other programs at other institutions. So how do you know, like, if your course success rate is like 70%? Is that good? Is that bad? You might want to look at another college's core, right? you might know that you have, colleagues that are teaching at another college, and you might want to see how their students are doing, or same with employment, right? To kind of gauge it. So that's sort of a lot of the usefulness of this data, right? They're lagging indicators, but they still provide information for you to understand where you want to focus or evaluate. Like there might not be a problem, right? Or you might support something you've heard or know. You might hear a lot of your students say, something that you want to know, is that really backed up by the data, and how does that compare my program to the whole institution that I'm at, right? Or if you're someone that works in sectors, how does that compare for my sector versus all CT programs? So it's still useful data, but it doesn't give you always the data that you need. And so let's just talk a tiny bit more about this before we take a break. And so they're really what we call lagging indicators, and they will be for some time. This is not real-time data, right? Even though colleges can submit data into the Chancellor's Office Management Information System anytime they really want to, you still have to wait for our dashboards until all 115, and there's going to be another one added soon, submit accurate student and course level data into this overarching system, right? So we end our academic year June 30th, and really we won't get a cut of the data until January. And that's really the time it takes for all these submissions. And then we have to wait a year for all the employment earnings, right? To see if a student exited, and for transfer, right? So we have to wait a year to see, did they not come back in our system? Because we wouldn't want to measure their earnings while they're still in their journey with us, right? I mean, they might like stop for a while and come back. And so if they've been gone for a year and come back, then we're going to say, okay, they're back now. It's like they've restarted their journey. Okay, let's look at them again, right? But so we have to wait a year for all those to make sure they don't come back to our system. And then for the CTO outcome survey, we have to wait an additional year to survey those students. And they do text, phone, email, and they get about a set 30% response rate, which is actually pretty good for a survey, but it does take time. So there's just this idea that's lagging, right? And then this is like, I was an economics major, and I thought at some point about being an economist, but the couple courses I took on econometrics were all about like cause and effect, right? And measuring like what causes, how can you say that this is a cause, that this had an effect, right, on the outcome. And so this is sort of the problem, right? You might be doing tons of great work in your program, but how do you know what you're doing is going to show up in an outcome on a lagging indicator dashboard, right? So my advice though is still to become data-driven, you've got to think about, that's why really, if it all comes through today to understand, if you can think through if, when, and where it might show up, to have that ready, right? Just to be able, because at the high level, this is what these metrics are used by our Chancellor's Office to report to the legislator to continue getting funding through some of these efforts. So somehow we got to think about, is it going to somehow, feed into some of these outcome metrics? Now, if you're designing a program that's short-term, not necessarily captured one of these outcome measures, oh my gosh, yes, we know right now we need a lot of short-term training. But just think about, like, if it's not going to show up, what else? Maybe you want to gather your own data, and this is not a small thing. I understand this, but you might want to, like, for example, if you're at a forestry program and you're training students to get employed in the federal government, or you're Lake Tahoe, who does all their students go to Nevada, and we do not get information for students employed in Nevada. We only have California. You might want to think about surveying or figuring out how you're going to do that, just to make sure that you can provide that story outside of LaunchBoard outcome data of what you're doing, right? In terms of making an effect, because you can tell the story of what you're doing, but it's getting more and more, you got to show the impact and the number that, right? That I hear this all the time from the new people that are the new people at the Chancellor's Office. We do a lot of like small interventions, right? That pilot programs, but just that idea, like, how could you figure out if it's not going to kind of feed into out? I mean, some clearly will. If you've got a program that's clearly directed towards, completion of associate degree, then we count that associate degree, right? And then if you got a program clearly directed towards transfer, we count that transfer. There's a lot of other things that happen, right? Interventions that are done. So I just encourage you to think through that when you're planning your interventions. Okay, And just a couple more slides. So just really quickly, I think when I saw this first slide, I remember for especially it was like this kind of epiphany. So evidence is critical to inquiry, right? But not all data are the same. And my background before I came, I'm old. Before I came to even work with educational data was really in finance. And I would never have called interesting data. For me, data was numbers. It was like, but there's a lot of interesting data out there, right? So you've got surveys, your student stories that alerts you to an issue, right? You might even do this something. There was a one-shot deal report that provided the student perspective on assessments, where many things were learned that kind of fed into some of the consideration that went to the AB 705 legislation. And so like we learned, like people would show up to take assessment tests and they had their child with them and they didn't know they were going to take an assessment test. And so that's great information, right? That's kind of that qualitative information. And then you've got useful data, which is where we kind of do the launch board. So for example, in the guided pathways tab, it shows that only 12% of students statewide make it through transfer of English and math in their first year, right? So it's aggregated outcomes that might give you a hint at some structural issues happening, right? And especially like when you drill down by race, ethnicity, now in the world we live in, to see the equity issues we've got going on, right? And then some of it, out kind of control, but to recognize that it's there. That's a lot of this useful information, but really that actionable data that you need to take action, like that's outside of dashboards, right? So for example, and if you're in an institution, you might be able to get this from your research office, is there's an MMAT formula that applied to specific students, allowing colleges to determine exactly the amount of support that might be needed to help them be successful in a college level course, right? So that's at student level, very specific. So you don't get that out of dashboards, right? But so I'm just trying to frame this of where it kind of fits into your inquiry process, right? I have a feeling a lot of people live in the interesting data world. If you're faculty, especially you've been around, you've heard the stories, or you're an a CT advisory board, you talk to employers, there's just like all that interesting data, right? It might be more formalized than that. But that's just where you're kind of balancing, right? All these ways of our plethora of data now that we have to deal with, and trying to think of how the LaunchBoard could help you, like take some of your stories, validating the data of the LaunchBoard potentially, right? You hear a lot of students say that they're going, that they're working in a certain sector, like that information's on the LaunchBoard. So just let's try to put this context of what we're going to look at in a little bit. And so that's where the LaunchBoard fits, right in the middle there. And so now I'm just gonna look at chat really quickly. Was there anything, Jessica, from chat?
Yeah, so I just wanted I think Dwayne was able to work out the Koki website. Just wanted to make sure Tanya had her question answered sufficiently.
Yeah, please feel free to unmute if anybody wants to.
Okay, great.
Yes. Okay, so why don't we take it's 11 o'clock. If we don't mind reconvening at about 11:10, I think that's fine. Don't you, Jessica?
Yeah, give people a quick break.
And if you want, I mean, I'll probably just step away for a moment, but I'll come back probably about 11:05 if you have any questions or just want to chat. We'll be here. Examples of things like that. So just really quickly before we dive in the demos, and we'll just right away, is the reasons why we're focusing on a strong workforce program. It's the only dashboard, or one of two dashboards to drill down to the top code level or sector. Again, it's really for the 17% SWP incentive funding. It does include students with a minimal course taking pattern. So they have to have done at least a half a credit unit or 12 or more positive attendance hours in any non-credit courses in the world. So there's a little bit of a hurdle to get into the dashboard that's different than student success metrics. And then it is a subset of metrics that will be in our beefy community college pipeline. So when you look at our community college pipeline that has that same minimal enrollment threshold, this just has a lot more metrics besides just those accountability ones. So you'll find the accountability ones buried into sections where you've got a lot of other metrics about retention, persistence of students, survey data, so that you're just not looking at just solely accountability metrics. I find myself when I'm just there, it's like you want to know more. And then, so community college pipeline is really a place to go for that. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica now to demo the community college pipeline. Oh, great. So Dwayne, thank you so much. Looks like you've got some specific points in chat. I'll stop sharing and Jessica, you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Karen. And I'm just going to slowly demonstrate how to get to the SWP dashboard and how to navigate the different features. Again, we are hoping this is going to be a very interactive session. So at any point, if you have any questions or if I'm going too fast, please put it in chat or just stop me, unmute yourself and stop me at any point. So the Strong Workforce Program and the LaunchBoard, again, is now available to the public. So I can quickly Google CalPAS LaunchBoard and be taken to the home page. And again, you'll see all of our tools here. So you can access anything from the home page, but we're going to go to the Strong Workforce Program. And it'll take a second to load. And so the Strong Workforce Program is organized into one single page, so you can quickly access all the metrics in one page. I'm going to go over what the buttons here are on top first. So if you find yourself on the Strong Workforce page and you're like, oh wait, no, I'd rather be somewhere else, you can click this menu button and go to any of our other dashboards or back to the home page. And you can also access our resources here as well. And if you're interested in just getting our definition dictionary, you can click this button right here. And this takes you to a separate page that lists out all of our metrics, the calculations, the data delimitations, and all of the background documentation that you would want that goes with a data dashboard tool. Okay, and then now I'm going to talk a little bit about the filter options here. And again, the Strong Workforce Program, you can look at it by the program or sector level. The default setting is all CTE programs, and that's because this is going to be a very CTE focused tool. We only have CTE programs loaded here. From here, you can search for the sector or by top code. We have a top 4 level as well as a top 6 level all the way down. And if scrolling is really annoying, you can just type in whatever you're searching for. So for example, if I want to search for accounting, I can start typing and it'll pop up right here, accounting. You can look again at the top 4 level or the top 6 level. And if, for those of you who are not familiar with top codes, this is the California Community College system for tagging programs and courses into disciplines, I guess. I'm going to keep it at all CTE programs for now. And again, I wanted to reiterate the connection between Strong Workforce and Community College Pipeline. If you select all CTE programs here, this will correspond directly to the values you'll see for all CTE within the Community College Pipeline tool as well. So they should reflect the same values. Here is what we call the locale selection. We can look at statewide or by region, by district and by college. And these drop-down menus work exactly like how the program and sector drop-down menus work. You can search macro regions by scrolling down, or you can do a search here for San Diego Imperial College. And again, that would work exactly the same way for micro region. Okay, and then here is the academic year that we can examine. Right now we have from 2011-2012 to 2018-2019. You can look at it right now it's set to a single year, but the default view for the drill downs is a timeline view, so you'll see the trends down here. The drill down filter menu provides you with how you can break down each of the metrics. I'm gonna keep us at the time trend view for a second. So if we want to focus on the microregion San Diego Imperial, you would have to click view here to reload the page with the data that you want to examine. Okay, so now that we want the data that we want to look at, if you are not a charts person, you want to make your own charts, you can export the data to CSV by clicking this button. And this will just download an Excel file that you can, that populates with all year's data and all drill downs available for the filter selections that you made. So if you selected a program in a specific locale, it'll download all of the information for you here, and I'll open it just so you can see what it looks like. But I won't spend too much time on here, but you can see this is what the location that we're looking at. This is the program that we're looking at. This is the metric title, and then you'll see here subgroups and disaggregations. You can also note if the data is missing or has been suppressed because of FERPA. Okay, so let me go back to the dashboard. All right, so now that we're looking at the charts, I'm going to walk through what's in a chart. How can I read this? So for every metric, we'll start with a metric title and then a brief description of what the metric is trying to capture. I'll be the first to admit that these descriptions are not super user-friendly, but they've been designed to really best capture exactly what we are capturing within the calculations. Within each chart, you can hover over and you can get the values. And underneath each chart, you can see the data source. So where does this information come from? As well as a technical definition. So if you're looking at these data and you're really confused, how did they come up with this? What does this data even mean? You can click this and it'll take you back to the metric definition page, but it will take you right to that exact metric that you're looking at. So again, you'll see that the name of the metric you're looking at, the same definition that we just read together, the data source, which data elements are part of this calculation, and not the code per se, but the pseudocode is what we're calling it, of how we've actually calculated that data from the MIS system. Okay, so that's how you can read one chart and really try to get as much information about it as you can. And so for the Strong Workforce Program, we have the number of Strong Workforce Program students we're capturing, the number of students who earned 9 or more career education units within the district in a single year. And again, with some metrics will be percentages. So this hover over text is really important because it tells you what the exact numerator and denominator is within that calculation. Okay, the next metric we can see on the Strong Workforce Program dashboard is the students who attained a non-credit workforce milestone within a single year. Our success metrics, which is kind of the completion metrics, which means the student either earned a degree or certificate or attained an apprenticeship journey status. And then once we get to this section, basically post-college outcomes is what we call the lagging indicators, exactly what Karen already described. We have to wait for students to not only exit the system so that we can start counting them. And so the latest year data will not reflect for any post-college outcomes. So if we're looking for students who transfer, we're not going to have 18-19 data right now. We have to make sure that they've exited the system and have not transferred somewhere before we can capture them within this metric. For the job closely related to field of study metric, you can see that the lag is 2 years because this metric itself is based on the CTE outcome survey. So we have to wait for them to exit and then wait for the Santa Rosa Junior College to survey them and then get the results back. So there's a 2-year lag for the CTE outcome survey data. And then the last 2 metrics on the dashboard is the median annual earnings metric. So you'll see what the median annual earnings is for exiters within the San Diego Imperial microregion, and as well as the number of students that are captured within this metric. And the last metric is, oh, actually there's two more metrics, sorry. The next metrics is median change in earnings. So from the start of, before they entered college and after they exited college, what is their change in earnings? And the attained a living wage metric is our last metric. So one thing I did want to point out here, and it's kind of hidden in this page, but if you go to our footers for any of our dashboard tools, we have nestled in a number of resources as well as the dates in which we got the data to populate the dashboards. So here you can see that we got the MIS files January of this year. And so if there's been any changes within your college after that date, this will not be captured within our dashboard. So some supporting resources here is something very useful is what changed. So we have Karen's provided great documentation on exactly what changed in the definitions between this year's build and last year's build. And it can take you quickly to our FAQs as well as some other resources there. And for those of you working on the Strong Workforce Program for many years, as we still have a record of our classic version. So the data and the look and feel of the Strong Workforce dashboard before this upgrade. You can access it by clicking this link. Again, you don't need a login or anything. You just kind of can go and look at your historical information so that you can compare the different data sources. Okay. So now let's look at our drill downs in a little bit more detail. Again, we have our drill downs here. We have our standard drill downs, which are age, gender, race, ethnicity. So if we click gender here, it'll take a second to load. And now all of the metrics will show the gender breakdown for the academic year that you selected. So you'll see the number of students, the number of females, the number of males, and then we have some mass values here. And for any time you have a drill down and you maybe want to clean it up a little, all of these charts are interactive. So if you click a category, you can just get rid of them from the chart and you can just focus on one specific category. So if you're just looking at females, you can do that. If you just want to look at females and males, you can do that. Most of these buttons are interactive and you can clean up the chart any way you like. Something new here that we added is additional language to help you understand when and if we did mask your values and why and how. So if you click here, it'll give you a little bit of more explanation about complementary suppression, why we do it. And then you can learn a little bit more here where we detail exactly what we do for all our launch boards in terms of our suppression logics. Okay, and then one thing that is unique to SWP and Guided Pathways is this benchmarks tool. So if we do benchmarks, it'll load a number of things. So it'll load what we have currently selected, which is the microregion San Diego Imperial. It'll compare it with the macro region, which is the same in this instance. And it will also compare it to the statewide number as well as the top microregion in the state. And it looks a little bit better in a percentage view just because comparing against the state using numbers really doesn't make sense. But for metrics that have percentages, it's very useful to see how your region is doing compared to the state and then compared to the top region in the state. And if you change your select into district or college, let's see. Mendocino College, I know this is not in your region, but if you select a college, the benchmarks will change. So we'll have your college displayed the district in which the college is located, the regions in which the college is located, the statewide numbers, as well as the top college in the state, versus before we had the top region in the state. So you can compare region to region and college to college in terms of benchmarking your results. So I'm going to go back to our default time trend. I'm going to go back to San Diego. And every time you select different filters, make sure you click view and reload the page because it doesn't do it automatically. And so the last thing I really wanted to show you is this detailed comparison view. So if you click here, a second filter option will pop down and you can compare different programs. So if we wanted to look at all CTE programs versus just the advanced manufacturing program, we can look at that. And then obviously if we want to keep it within San Diego, you can do that. And then click view. Let's see, it didn't work because this reset itself when I changed my locale. So that's something we're trying to fix as well. But bear with us. Okay, and so it's kind of difficult to compare all CTE with just one sector, but let's look at that percentage view. You'll see here both selections will show up. So the all CTE will be in blue, the advanced manufacturing will be in orange, or in yellow, I guess. Sorry, I'm having trouble with that, with colors today. And if you hover over it, you'll see the numbers for each selection. And if you select a drill down, so if you wanted to look at gender specifically, again, we can compare the subgroups between the different programs. And so again, it's always easier to look at percentages. So we'll just jump to this. So you can see, again, blue is all CTE, yellow is advanced manufacturing, how many females earned 9 or more credits in the district. And you can compare the two values.
Well, that female percentage is so much higher for advanced manufacturing. That's so interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. But it doesn't tell you why.
It doesn't tell you why, no.
Okay.
So that's all I had for the SWP demo. You can look at this and much more with CCP that Karen's going to go over with you in a second. But I wanted to pause and make sure there were no questions, or if you wanted me to do, if you wanted me to look at anything specific again, please unmute yourself or put it into chat.
I'm going to put a question in the chat about some functionality that we lost. Basically, we've just heard a lot of interest for people used to be able to export charts into a PDF. I take screenshots a lot and then like bring them into a Paint or something and then incorporate. But if anybody wants to chime in, if you think that'd be very useful if you remember that functionality. So in any of these charts, it would say export to PDF. I'm just trying to gauge how people, because people's interactions now, we're seeing what people want is they want to export the data, or they want to just select certain charts to put into their PowerPoint. So we used to have where you would just have a little button here would say print to PDF and print this exact chart. So I just want to know if people think that would still be interesting for their work, if you're like, don't care.
Monica says she would like it. Looks like Walter has them. Yeah,
okay.
Great.
Yeah, I know. So we'll think about, especially for SWP, Windows have a print to PDF. Yeah, true. Yeah, they do. They do, but then the problem is that you don't necessarily get the chart, right? Just the chart. So, but then also I like to manipulate my charts separately too. So I'm kind of picky. I don't always like how it's displayed, but sometimes this is something quick you could do, right? Like you quickly want to incorporate it into a PowerPoint is a lot of times what I want to do. Okay. If no one has any questions, why don't we go to CCP then, Jessica? Or were there questions? Any questions?
No, I think we can rock and roll with Community College Pipeline.
Okay,
Can-
so I'm going to share my screen and we'll go to what was on Community College Pipeline. Jessica showed you how you can just, Google LaunchBoard to get there. I'm here. She was here on Strong Workforce. I'm here on Community College Pipeline. Again, this is our oldest. Jessica did such a good job showing the navigation that I'm really only going to talk about things that are unique to this dashboard. And then we'll get looking at some of the metrics and some of the ways that you navigate a little bit that are a little bit different here. Like Jessica described, we've got our link to the dictionary. She took it to the web version. There's also a download to Word that's a lot easier to use. These two selections are swapped between SWP and CCP, but basically this is the same functionality as SWP with locale is what we call it, and program sector. Now you can see in CCP though, we don't just have all CTE, we have all programs and all non-CTE programs, and then we have the sectors, top codes, top 4, but of course now they include the non-CTE top codes. And so that is sometimes interesting if you're somebody that works at a college level to see your CTE versus non-CTE, if you're justifying something about the differences in those types of programs. That's a nice comparison to do with the same kind of detailed comparison that Jessica showed you. I'll show you where you do that. You wouldn't do that here on this landing page. When we land on Community College Pipeline, we kind of something that we call the home page. That's one level for viewing the data that has one metric from each of the student parts on the student journey. So offering students milestones or progress, success, employment, earnings. So that's different from those accountability dashboards that really are just on one page. We've got a home page we come to here. I'm gonna go back 1 year so that these populate. And you can see just really quickly, like if we wanted to look at, your region, quickly just to get like one metric out of each student journey. You see you're serving 215,000 students and that's deduplicated. You've got 65% economically disadvantaged. So this is this Perkins, not Perkins 5 definition, but a Perkins definition from the Chancellor's Office. Retention, fall to spring at any college. You've got some success. You can actually hover over here too to see you got a lot of completers, transfers, skill builders with earning gains. 55% employed, 44% of students earning a living wage, right? So it's just real high level. So that's kind of unique to Community College Pipeline. The other unique thing is you have an extra drill down here to look at credit status. So you can look at all students who either took credit or non-credit courses. So that's all students, or you can just filter for credit students. So it doesn't, they didn't just take credit, but they took credit too, or non-credit students, right? It was really kind of strange results to filter for just non-credit only and credit only. But we find that the field would find that more useful. We can change that. And just know that when you select credit or non-credit, you're going to see some metrics go away, right? Because some metrics aren't applicable to credit, while some metrics are not applicable to non-credit students. And so the other feature that's different for this dashboard is that there is a full export function. And that's the Chancellor's Office, for some strange reason beyond me, still wants this to be for researchers, which means that you have to email. If you go here to the tile, it'll tell you that basically will go to me and you can ask me to be put on the list. And this way, for your region or college or district, you could export all top 4 or all top 6. This might be interesting for somebody who's working up, as a CTE dean or something, to get all your top codes. And then you can decide if you want it for all students or credit or non-credit. You will get all disaggregations. And then you will get only 1 year of data at a time, just because the data file would be so big. I tried to see if they could do like 3 years, but they can still only doing 1 year at a time. So if you want to get all your data, you have to export each year. But that's just a really nice function. Again, feel free to email here and we can add your name to the list of people who can export, but it's supposed to be researchers, technical assistance providers. But if you justify a reason of how you would use the data, you can definitely be added to the list. Okay, go back to the home page where I was here. And so now the second level of data is something that's not available in other dashboards. I'm just gonna go into the earnings tile. And this level is called the summary. And the way I know I'm here is it says summary right here. This would be the home tile we just were at, right? I navigated with I went into that tile of view earnings. I decided that's what I'm interested in. And we know, again, we're at the summary level. It takes a couple metrics with a few infographics and just gives you a little bit more information. So, you know, before we just saw living wage, now we see, you know, the percentage change of earnings. We actually show an equity, kind of an equity gap for earnings, which just shows you for different gender drill down what the different earnings are. You can do by race, ethnicity as well. To quickly kind of see for the latest year available, some of the differences, right? At a very, very high level. I don't spend too much time on this, this summary view. Where most people will spend their time is in the detailed data. And if you'll notice then, now this is starting to look a bit more familiar with this chart that's similar to the time trend with the drill down in the chart versus up there in the ribbon that we had before with SWP, because that's like just one page, right? Now we know we're in detailed data. We know we're in earnings. We're no longer on summary, but I can toggle back and forth here. The one nice thing on this dashboard are these arrows. And a lot of times, if you don't know about these, you could have a lot of frustration with, you keep going back to the home page to go into views, but you can just toggle through the student journey. So let's say I want to go back to employment, back to success, back to milestones, students, and offerings. So I can do that either at the summary view level, I can toggle and I stay at the summary view level, or I can go into the detailed data and still toggle between the different views. The other thing that we've got on Community College Pipeline, Jessica explained this carrot on SWP. The resources will be different for this dashboard. But again, we have the dates of the files, very similar files, same dates. But then we also have this click here to view resources. And this is a whole library of resources that's been developed over time. If I go from this page, it tends to take me to resources that are available for the tile that I'm at, which is progress. And so let me go back to the home page and show you on the home page, just so you see how, let's say that maybe I'm having problems with understanding what this expert data to CSV is or something. I can go into this resources and start looking for anything that might help me. And so you can just start looking. I find sometimes I don't find, because I already look for export in here, but I just will say I want to like look at what export comes up for export. I've got a resource about using that export and exactly what the columns mean. And so it's just a big library. And for people that are new to your system, I kind of advise that you send them here. Some of it's a little bit outdated, but there's especially the videos that were done when we had a different interface of the dashboard. And over time, we will keep updating these. I updated a bunch of them for this release. And you can see we have a bunch of different types of resources, infographics, short videos, briefs. I've updated a lot of these briefs and some of the detailed guides. Some of the longer briefs that like were done by the RP group are still really valuable information. And so it's just know that that's there as potential resources, especially if you've got somebody new to the system, you just kind of want to send them someplace. There's all kinds of things about program review. It's not always all about the dashboard. It's a little bit more expansive than that, I would say. And we're going to really focus on that, on that information. So let me go back into my detailed data view, because I just want to make sure this is also unique to CCP, is the way you navigate in the detailed data view where I am is with these carrots. And so right now courses is expanded. You can see I've got course retention, course success as options under that carrot. I give it another carrot and I have a whole nother list of metrics here. And so here's where you see we've got the one metric that's in student-centered funding formula. But we also have it broken down for just transfer of math, just transfer of English. We've got a skills gain metric, different metrics in credit momentum. And so we'll go into one of these. The other thing that we've got in CCP that's unique, not with just the time trend, is we've got the table below that gives you all of the data by year, so that here you can hover over and see these counts, but here it gives you the percent and the counts to quickly look through and say, oh, wow, we've been pretty stagnant on our course retention rate, hasn't changed much. And And then, so just so you know, that's a little bit different. Always usually at the bottom, we have the CTA outcome survey responses. When I press this, anything here, it's going to tell me that it's not yet available. So I need to go back another year for that to populate. Okay. And so that's just really unique. And they all look, we all made them look the same for detailed data. So it always will be the same. On success, you've got just tons of students earning awards. So we've got all kinds of ways to look at the award levels. There's this attain the vision goal completion definition that's an accountability. You just want to look at apprenticeship journey level status. You can do that. Again, anything can be broken down by our disaggregations. The one thing I do want to show you, unless there's something in chat that applies to. Okay, great. Sounds like you guys are taking care of each other. I think it is consistent. Yeah. Right, you have to email the, yep, perfect, perfect. Thank you, thank you. That looks answered. But I do want to show you then, let's look at employed in the second fiscal quarter after exit. Whenever you're in employment or earnings, so that's, you know, we're up here on the home page and you're in either one of these tiles, employment or earnings, you're going to see that added to the drill down has been completion status. We feel that it's pretty important to understand how your different students are doing out there in the workforce. And so this is just a real high level to say, okay, anybody who attained an approved certificate, that'd be 8 units or more from the Chancellor's Office, or a non-credit certificate. We include both, but they have to be Chancellor's Office approved. So they're not under 48 hours for non-credit. And then you can see associate degree earners, you see just what the difference, not a lot of difference between those different populations. Again, this is down in the table for the year selected. Let me go to the most recent year here. You're going to see that disaggregation broken down in the table to quickly look to see not only counts, right? So the numbers, but also the percentages. You can see there's a bit of a difference between students who just got a certificate versus, oh, wow, look at that. Your local certificate students are more employed, which maybe makes a lot of sense because students might already be employed. But then, so just know that you can do this with any employment or earnings data that's on the dashboard. Let's try the annual. So the annual earnings after exiting is the metric that's used for the attainment of the living wage. If you broke that down by completion status, this is always kind of interesting, your skills builders, and this is very common. Your skills builders that might have already some work experience, of course, right? Coming back to get some training. You can see then that they're actually earning more earnings than some of the other completers. And this is just one for completers here. Again, the table will tell you exactly how they compare and the number, right? So sometimes when you're drilling down by program, these numbers might get really low. And again, if they're below 10, we're going to suppress for FERPA reasons. And I know that's very frustrating, but that's just what we have to live with right now until there's any kind of decision made to lower that. If you're at the survey data, it's suppressed at just 3 because we don't know who responded to the survey. But there's just a lot of ways. There's some longer term metrics that we brought in to look at your students 3 years after exiting or 5 years. You're going to find some labor market information in the dashboard, again, from Centers of Excellence to show you the numbers that the top jobs map to whatever your selection is. And then this is a level where you really want to do that detailed comparison that Jessica showed you earlier. And it looks like I lost my regional. Let's go back to San Diego.
And Karen, with just a 10-minute warning, FYI.
Yep. And let's say that maybe you do want to look at like your all CT versus all non-CT. Just let's look at that and see and make sure. What I highly advise is that you do the same years comparisons here. You don't try to compare years. That just doesn't work very well for this. It's really about these 2 boxes, and essentially you can select anything in these 2 boxes. So if you did want to see how this looks and I'm not sure why this isn't up here. That's because, let me go down we can't do that. You can't do that with labor market data. Let's go back to earnings. And so it always reminds you like what's what. So we're not surprised, you know, that CTE programs have pretty high earnings. That's measured 2 quarters after exit. So essentially, we consider all students, no matter when they really exited for our dashboard, they exit in June. And then we look and look at that second quarter earnings. This is all defined by the student-centered funding form. It's also the same as WIOA. We look for those October, December wages, and we take them times 4. And so that's what these median annual earnings are. So, and again, we don't show for anybody who's still enrolled in any kind of education. And so then you can just do this kind of comparison below in the chart. Will show you exactly how it compares for each year. And I did want to say one last thing. Let me get rid of the detailed comparison. Is when you are at a macro region or micro region view, one thing that we've done this year is below the table that you'll get without a regional view is you'll get every college in the region and how they compare. And so for people that are working at a regional level, this is how you can look quickly to see for the year selected. We couldn't do every year and this would be too much. You can see what that is for each college. That's kind of a nice feature to make sure that you know it's available. It doesn't work for multi-college districts. So it's only at the macro or micro region level that you'll see this, and you will see it for every single chart. And so like I was looking earlier, just know this students tab has just a plethora of metrics about your students. So if you want to get like real data, you probably know pretty well who you're serving, but like, let's say first gen, you want to understand that. Again, you'll be able to look down at the colleges and see some of the differences. It looks like, you know, I know what's happening here is it's just not populated for some of these colleges where it's not reported perhaps. That's why perhaps it's so low. First gen might not be the best one to look at. Let's look at, let's say prior course taking. So they previously took a high school, CT high school course, okay? So I'm at the regional level. Let's look at San Diego. This is what I was looking at earlier, which was pretty interesting, is I was pretty surprised to see the Imperial Valley College. I don't know much about regional, I'll confess, that, you know, you got like really higher rates of students who have previously taken a CT course in high school. And then pretty similar amongst your other colleges. There's just things like that that are interesting if you're at a regional level or you want to do comparisons, that kind of thing. We had early college credit. There's just a lot of information here about, this is where you can see about full-time, part-time students in your system. Like I heard somebody talk about how he knew that his students, you know, were working during the day. Probably a lot of your students are part-time. That's what we find. If you want to know about first time, how many students first time, again, you can look at specific programs to see, compare to see how you're doing versus the college you're at. All those kinds of things are how you could explore. To not tell you.
Janine had a great question about Perkins.
Oh, Perkins, yes.
Perkins and capturing that data.
Yeah, so the problem that I'm starting to understand with the Perkins is if there's no plan right now, is that there's just got to be some, there has to be some decisions by the chancellor's office of how, I know that you have Perkins reporting to do, right? And I know that's rolled up at, and we've always had this. I have been, before I joined Wested, I remember sitting in a small trailer at Napa Valley College with somebody who was just banging their heads with Perkins reporting and trying to figure out, you know, how to do some of the reporting from some of the information he had at hand. So I hear loud and clear. I just think there has to be some work done at the chancellor's office to decide. Yes, especially the changes in Perkins 5, absolutely. So there has to be some decisions at the chancellor's office. And this is kind of what tends to happen in our work is like we push for our current Perkins economic disadvantage definition, because it always seems like we're the ones that have to get it figured out because we have to display it and we have to describe it and we have our long dictionary. So we will bring back this. We were hearing it more and more now to the chancellor's office. That this need to have something to do your Perkins 5 reporting. And what it could be is like an extract of our data. If it did align to what you need for reporting, that would probably be the route they'd like to do. And we're talking more and more about that. We just got pinged the other day to do some of your accreditation reporting There's some things that are in our dashboards that could easily just be pulled out and easily given to you to do accreditation. So you have to go and look and pick. And so I think that will be definitely a path for taking our dashboards. Already for student equity achievement, that's already being built in next year, the cohort view to do student and equity achievement reporting that's needed. So we will absolutely take back this, and we actually talked with Chancellor's office. We will put this on our list because I'm hearing it more and more. And I know how painful.
All right, Karen, you want to start wrapping up?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. So let's just go back to the slide deck. And just we have do one slide just kind of about, we're hopefully ran out of time like we usually do, even though we had 2 hours, is just trying to like think about, and if you want to chat or you want to put this in the survey, anything that information, and I would really love for Alan, if you have a chance in the survey, to put in some of these things you're thinking about to enhance something we might display that's more about a little bit more qualitative, like top reasons or something. That kind of thing, we just love to know, like what would you really use, right? And for program review, for anything that you do at your college that's just kind of repetitive, using data, that would help us understand, to know how you know, if this is like what else you might need or what you use out of our dashboards. And so I won't do this right now. This is next year's priorities. We do have some Chancellor's Office webinars. There's one today on Community College Pipeline. I actually think what we did today will be very similar, or it's actually a lot deeper than what we're going to do this afternoon. But please, for the other dashboards that we didn't cover today, and for the 17%, these are the dates for the Chancellor's Office webinars. It will be a lot. Some Chancellor's Office talking, and then our West Ed team doing a lot of talking as well and presenting. We do have a survey link that we will provide in chat, and I bet Jessica's already thought of that. Yes, she has. And so we really encourage you, we really encourage you to reach out to us at any time if you're frustrated with something that we've shown you today. And we just really hope that this was helpful for your work, and wish you the best of luck out there too. We know it's challenging times right now. And it's almost become more challenging with the amounts of data we've got. So we just hope that we've helped you navigate and understand where you can go to find what you need, and how to use it. And Jessica, is there anything else you want to wrap up with that I forgot to say?
No, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know it's a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time, even though we had 2 hours together. It's just, this online format is new to all of us. And we're always available via email if there's any specific questions that you think about later. And that forum is going to be open all the time. So it's not just for this session. So anytime you have some LaunchBoard feedback and you're like, you know what, this could be improved in XYZ way, feel free to just hop on back on that forum or email us directly, because we are always looking for feedback on how to improve and how to make these dashboards more useful for you guys.
Yeah, and we weren't out in the field as much as we liked it last year. We just kind of were not allowed to be, I guess I would say, or encouraged to be, or and so we kind of missing this feedback loop of making sure, you know, we hear from the field and bringing that back to the Chancellor's Office as much as possible. We feel like that's really one of West Ed's missions in this work, because we are kind of the intermediaries between the field, the Chancellor's Office, and then the coders that code the metrics. So we really try to play that role to help bring in, to make sure we could try to meet your needs. So thank you so much. And I think Jessica, you can stop the recording, and it is a couple minutes after. So thank you so much, everybody.